Even in all, we've landed underground. So the ship literally warped itself into a planet. I think we have literally the stupidest warp drive ship possible. Loving this mod. It's fantastic. You must come play it. It's brilliant. I do play quite often and I do open up the server. So if you want to join, come join. But this thing is ridiculous. So where we were last time is we were starting to unlock the warp enablement technology. Well, forget all that because we've now landed underground. And the problem is our warp drive button has now flown off. So imagine it's like an arcing jet of kind of stupid technology flying at slow motion into the distance and then impacting into the ground. Or did the ship just materialize in the ground? Who knows? But the thing has disappeared. However, in life, you're going to get fed, a poop sandwich, let's say. And the biggest test in your life is how you then react to that. And so this is a wonderful example of, the pea sandwich being handed to you. And you now have an opportunity to take a great big bite. I have found warp material, whatever they call it, warponium, I don't know, unobtainium warp stuff, which is good because we can now mine this because we need this to actually upgrade the warp drive platform anyway. So really, really, really excited about this sort of mishap. Now, obviously this gives us a problem because there is a warp drive button that has literally disappeared off into the ether. It is strewn somewhere under the ruins, having literally bile from some unspeakable horror dripped upon it. I can't find it. I can't get it. This video represents 3 hours of me trying to find it. And in the end, just realizing my life is literally ebbing away. I need to just move on. So I did move on in the end. And we had to then basically fix the warp drive itself, which we'll come back to. That's the next video. So basically, this whole video is about me trying to kind of find the warp button, but mostly it's actually about mining this weird new material, which actually I need rather a lot of. And as you can see, we needed water for this. So trust me to find the only warptonium, whatever, spring rather, whatever patch that didn't have a water patch next to it, because it needs cutting fluid. I know, stupid, right? But there we go. So this is like an opportunity and I'm not going to miss it. So here we go. So this whole mod I think just breaks my mind because only just have we got to a point where we now have a warp enablement floor. We then have floor 1, which is literally an expanding, growing floor, which is basically under the ship, if you like, or is inside the ship. And then we have our platform, which is exposed to the outside. And what I've started to do is actually do some quite clever things where we don't necessarily need bolt base anymore. So we're starting to basically build warp enablement chests. And it sounds like weird, but the idea of a warp enablement chest is basically if you put materials in it anywhere on the platform, you can then access it. So this then opens up entirely new production methods. And you'll see it in just a moment where we have just random factories dropping and pulling from these warp chests. It's really quite cool. We'll do a deeper dive another time. But for me, this is the key one, is we're starting to mine warptonium. Warpomium, who knows, but it's that kind of material stuff, the red stuff, that actually now is what we need, because to be honest, we've had this issue with the platform for so long where it needs fixing that now we're hopefully getting to that point where we can maybe do that. But it's such a compelling, interesting mod. I mean, it amazes me how much people spend on these mods, because the time that must have gone into doing this. This is a warp enablement chest. So what it's basically doing is it's taking all of the products and just dropping it into that chest. And then that chest is on the warp enablement floor, a version of it. And it's pulling the material straight into it. It's just beautiful. I think I am smitten utterly with this mod. I do enjoy it. And I still haven't seen any footage. So, there are people that have done video playthroughs of this. I have deliberately avoided it because I don't want to be spoiled. So this whole thing of the ship landing in the rock, I thought was just wonderful. Like, it came out of nowhere. The ship basically, I was just mining out in the middle of nowhere, and the ship suddenly had a 1 minute timer because it was jumping automatically, which was really funny. So I had to basically get back. I've lost so many things in the ether with this, with this whole thing. And as you can see, we're in a giant cave system. So it's like the caves that you find in the wild that, you know, basically are just full of terrible, terrible things. And so part of the mission here is, you know, obviously to like, explore. And so I did try and find the warp button, but, you know, spoiler alert, I didn't. In the end, I must have gone in every direction for quite a way, couldn't find it. And in the end, I just decided that we're just going to have to rebuild it, which I'm not kidding. 260 engines were needed to rebuild that warp button. That's a hell of a button. Like if I think of a button, I'm looking at one now, press. This thing is obviously just crazy. So really loving this mod. I think one of the key sort of areas of it, I think, is just going to be resource acquisition, because one of the things I've not really done at the moment is the warp sucker. And no, that's not your mum. What it is, it's like a machine that you place upon the ore patch, and then it warps those resources into the platform. Brilliant, right? Not really messed too much with that, but now that I've got warponium, I can actually start to go into that area, because what we're doing at the moment is when we land, we're taking the ship we're taking miners directly out into basically the resource patches and then mining into the warp container. And that's pretty much the only way we can do it at the moment. It's kind of working, but there are certain limitations with it because it takes so long to set up without drones, and you basically are at risk of being attacked every single time. I do find that we have a timer of about 25 minutes. We never make it. We get to about literally 15 minutes in, and the attacks are so severe that we basically just have to run away. So far, not the best. I do have some interesting armaments though, so you can see so I should have probably been mining there because there's water there, but never mind, next time. I do think there is a real oh no, that's uranium, I think. Anyway, I think this mod could be probably one of my most favorite mods next to space age exploration or space exploration. I still think that is probably the finest example of a mod that ironically became a full game. It's a bit like Save Our Ship in RimWorld. They've made that RimWorld Odyssey. And it does feel that these kind of mods are very fast becoming standalone games now. So, it's quite reassuring to see it actually, because it does mean that people have an avenue for creativity that could lead to some sort of remuneration. Like Team Fortress 2, I think, was a mod. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that was someone taking the Half-Life engine and deciding to make a team shooter out of it. And look at where that went. So definitely, I think there's space, room and time for these mods. And I would say this one it's hard, but it's fair. Like, it's fair to a degree. I'm going to kind of caveat that with a bit of a thing to say. I think it's pretty good, but I would say, it's going to take a lot of your time to do this. I'm playing it probably completely wrong as well, because I'm very cautiously playing it. I'm carefully sort of progressing through the map. I find that it's a really interesting challenge because you get to a point where you run out of coal, you've got a problem. So you have to constantly be kind of aware that you're going to have issues, right? So here we go. Prime example of why destroyers are brilliant. They're pretty good and they're worth doing. Now, again, the interesting thing is we need fish. So many things in the game that have never really been open to me or I've never bothered with, like fish to heal yourself. Now you do. That's a really positive part of this whole thing. So yeah, I really do like it. I think it's just fun. Anyway, I won't gush too much more about it. I think, definitely worth a try. Let's talk about maybe what we're doing in the game, because I think the biggest challenge is the platform itself is now got to a point where it needs to be expanded, but to expand it is going to take an awful lot of resources. So I think this is why it becomes a bit of a challenge that when you warp to a world, because you've got 10, 15, 20, 25 minutes at the best, depending on how upgraded you are, on that bit of land, if you don't have certain ores, you have to then jump again. And I do find that is becoming a bit of a challenge. This platform burns through iron. Like, I'm not kidding. You can literally have like a full stack of 30 miners mining iron. It's barely holding on because there's just so much in this. It's ammo. It's all of the machines. It's chips. And, things like oil, I've tried so hard to kind of create oil, to get oil onto the platform. It has been one of the biggest challenges I think we've had yet. So, It's hard. I think this is probably one of those mods to really challenge yourself with. I would stress it's not easy. There's probably players out there who are like, yeah, it's really easy. Well, good on you. I found it really flipping hard. I've not died too much. It's more the sort of feeling of barely holding on. You know, you jump somewhere, you then realize you're running low on coal. You then realize you have to run around smashing rocks to get that 10 units of coal from it. It's it's a bit annoying, but I would stress that it's probably what you've got to do. So here we go. So we've got a minute to pack up. At this point, I had given up entirely on trying to find the warp button. I was just like, whatever. Like, it doesn't tell you where it is. It's pretty difficult to find it. And all of these things, again, I'm still at a point where I don't have abundance of resource. So I can't just literally leave these things here and keep mining. I would love to, but you know, things like steel is not easy to make. So unfortunately, there is a little bit of needing to pack up. And there we go. So we're under a minute left. It's pretty hard. Like, again, I really would stress that mods like this do test you, you know, and you can see the structure there. So how we're doing it, you've got basically warp enablement chests that have certain configurations of materials that then drop into the chest and then drop back out. So it's definitely helping with spaghetti. I think actually if I could, I mean, the chests are quite expensive, so I can't put them everywhere, but, you know, we're working on it. I think the iron production is way underpowered, like way underpowered, but we haven't really had the space. It's only the last update, or rather the last bit of research that expanded the perimeter of the ship. That means if I wished to, I probably could have a better time. In fact, that's probably what we need to do, is to expand the ship. But right now, the warp button is a huge issue. And you're probably wondering why. Well, think about it. The warp ship is now going to jump somewhere. And then we've got a problem, because when it jumps then somewhere dangerous, we can't warp away. We're going to be literally at the mercy of whatever the next jump is. And that's exactly what's about to happen. But we'll show that in the next video, because what I'd like to do is show you all the failed runs that I basically did trying to find the warp jump button. Because I must have searched this cave system for like I say, 3 hours, and it just drove me insane. But you can see the repair requirement, 260 engines. Engines, everyone who plays Factorio knows engines are slow. They take ages to build. So this is why everything else there, except the concrete, that's a bit hard because we're not making that at the moment. But everything else, easy. But definitely that's going to be a problem. So little wind back in time there. Let me show you some of the failed runs where we just found the most incredible you know, threats. Like, seriously, I must have died multiple times trying to find this thing. And thankfully I had drones. This is a bit of foresight to build these, but look at the terrors that basically await me. Oh no, maybe not here, but you can see basically everywhere you go, you're going to find basically horrors and nothing particularly useful. So cave systems are a bit tricky at the moment. I did hear that there are potentials to find things like runes, but I could be wrong. I mean, again, I don't want to be spoiled on this one, so I'm being very selective on how I mean, people tell me things, so I'm probably already aware of it, but you know, this is where you just want a railgun. Like a railgun probably would shoot through all these things easily, but for now, I think this has been a real challenge, is to try and find and explore basically a cave system. I loved this, even though it was driving me insane. I definitely enjoyed it, and I think I understood now basically how caves work. That's probably one of the benefits of doing it. But I would say definitely now, you know, it was hard. I think this whole experience was difficult, particularly because at the moment I'm playing a bit of Star Citizen. Post in the comments if you're playing Star Citizen. I never really appreciated how good that game is. Josh Evil, he's been playing it since year dot. He's got all the ships. He's very much a master of it. Oh, look at this death. Look at this terrible, you know, cave of death. It just made me laugh. Like, everywhere I'm going, I'm just finding horrors. It's brilliant. And I think I'm almost dead, but there we go. But it's a wonderful example of just, like, how hard the game can be at times. Anyway, so playing Star Citizen at the moment, I've always been a bit hesitant with it, but I've got to admit I am thoroughly enjoying it. So you can expect a bit of content coming your way. If you play it, then hit me up in Discord, because it'd be good to add you as a friend, because then I can come mooch off you and fly around in your spaceship. But I've got to admit, I bought like the starter pack, and I'm pleasantly surprised. I've always kind of weighed games like that up against others. So with Factorio, I've always thought, things like Satisfactory and Minecraft have a similar feel to them. I still think Factorio has a top down. So here's a weird thought for you. I've always put Factorio and Project Zomboid next to each other. For some reason, I think they're very similar in terms of how they play. They look similar, but I mean more from a point of gameplay. You don't make factories in Zomboid, but you do have this kind of disassociated view of a world that you interact with through materials and things. There we go. That's how I would paraphrase it. And I think when I think of Star Citizen, I think of Elite Dangerous. I am a big Elite fan. I haven't played it in years though. And here's the interesting thing about it. I just lost connection with it. Trouble and I went to the launch event of Eve Dangerous. I bet you didn't know that. We have videos of it on the channel. If you've never seen it, go and have a look. But the launch event was interestingly held at somewhere where I think they filmed Top Gear once. So they decided to try and do a Top Gear style sort of thing, and it didn't quite work. I think it was a bit, I don't know, I wasn't a fan of it, but it was interesting to see the launch event. And I think when you look at that game where it is now, it's still very, very good. I love the fact that you can still disappear into a universe of hundreds of thousands of star systems. I love that. I still think it's absolutely spot on. Where I think it fell short was I tried playing the first-person shooter element of Elite Dangerous. Didn't like it. And I thought it was very janky. And I mean, it may be better now. But I'll tell you, for Star Citizen, what I experienced when I did the shooty bit of that, I was very impressed with. Like, I think the guns are good. The gun game is good. The combat's good. The ability to, kind of set up your character. A lot of people watch my channel for Dust. I mean, that's where I started, Dust 514. It was a really, if those that don't know, it was a really good game based upon the ability to configure your suits incredibly. But there we go, we died because the ship jumped away. So let's try again. And we basically, Dust was a really good game because the guns were configurable, the suits were configurable. You could do lots of different things. But it was a round-based shooter. So it did have a limit, whereas what I think Star Citizen has done is they've taken the entire open world desirability of something like the Eve universe, and they've now made it where you can fly a ship or you can shoot you could shoot guns. You can literally be dropped into orbit, through a drop ship that lands, and then soldiers rush out with tanks and vehicles and even jet bikes. So it gets a big plus for me because I love the concept of jet bikes. So to be honest, they've aced it. They've nailed it. It's buggy. I have found lots of bugs in Star Citizen that really annoy me. And that might just be that you just have to accept that it's still being developed. I don't know, but it's taken almost $1 billion. And yet it still feels as if there's just loads that needs to be optimized. But these are minor things. I still think it's definitely worth merit. I mean, the game doesn't cost a fortune. You're basically buying a package. So I just paid like £30 for like a ship. So I have that ship forever now. And that's it. I get access to the game. Nothing more needed. That's it. If I want to buy more ships, I can. I can also buy them in game with currency. So to be honest, I do think there's actually quite a good business model here as well, because it's kind of like, you've bought the game, off you go. And I don't think there's a subscription element to it. Whereas Eve Frontier and Eve Online, there's a ridiculous subscription model. And yes, you've got free to play for Eve. I find free to play very restricting for the sort of things I want to do. So I think that's kind of the issue. Like, I would be multi-boxing Eve Online right now if it was free to play. It's not. You can't do that. So you need to be subscribed to have multiple accounts running. Loads of things wrong with it. And I just think, I don't like that. So it's a bit annoying. But coming back to Factorio, I still think that there's lots of wonderful examples of games that have that kind of comparison, the ability to compare. And I still think Factorio still relatively is unique. I mean, yes, it's comparable in terms of look and feel and style, but I do think there's something about it. And when you start to like play mods like this, you realize you could literally just play one game for the rest of your life. This is the game. I mean, I thought about that. If I had just one game to play for the rest of my life, it would be Factorio, because there's just so much repeatability and enjoyment in it. You know, everybody gets sort of wary of games. That's the point of them, I think, is they're not supposed to last forever. But I would say this one, for some reason, it just seems to have longevity. And when I look at like 3,000 hours in the game, I mean, that's pretty crazy. That shows that I must like this game. More so than most other games I think I've ever played. And I think that's a wonderful example of longevity. And when you start to add mods to this, you know, I think it's just great. We'll look at next time, I think, about some of the mods sort of characteristics, because we haven't talked in depth about Warp Drive Machine. But there are some really difficult things in it that I think really do warrant a discussion. I think it's wonderful, really. You know, but the thing that I think is probably the most ironically annoying thing is the way that you can only build on floors. So you have to actually say, right, this is going to be a refinery, that's going to be manufacturing, this is going to be power generation. And then that breaks down even more to like, oh, you want solar panels, do you? Well, you need a special floor for that as well. I love it, but oh my God, it's hard. It becomes really challenging after a while. So I do think there's a lot of challenge in games like this, but I just think this is sublime, and I would recommend, if you're not playing this, give it a go. It doesn't take too long to download. You just go to the mod section and basically load it, and I don't think you'll be disappointed because it's rather fun. But there we go, we didn't find the warp drive button. In the next episode, you're going to see us try to repair on a hard planet, because obviously the game throws us into the hardest possible planet, and then it's all about trying to escape and build that button. Hope you enjoyed that. See you next time.